So being 7 o'clock, I call to order the Lancaster Zoning Board of Appeals. Start with a roll call vote. Gene Rich.
Here.
Dennis Hubbard.
Here.
Michael Bray.
Here.
Frank Sullivan.
Here.
Eric Jakubowicz. Eric can't hear you.
I see him, but he's muted.
Yeah, you're muted, EJ.
There you are.
There he is.
Okay. All right. So first item on the agenda is to approve the meeting minutes of 1/25/24.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of January 25, 24 as amended.
I had one amendment left, G, that I
Okay.
I know you'd said.
I'm on the meeting.
What's that again? So the last thing was on the vote for 69 Main Street. We recorded the votes. It was 5-0, but the vote is labeled 4-0 at the very bottom of the page.
That's right. Yeah. I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All
Dennis.
right. Motion by Gene, second by Dennis Hubbard. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. So for this, Gene Rich.
Yes.
Frank Sullivan.
Here. Yes. Sorry.
Eric Jakubowicz.
Yes.
Dennis Hubbard.
Yes.
And Rob Alex, yes. And Michael, I'm not going to have you do it because you weren't at that meeting. So, all right. So that is approved. Second on the agenda is the meeting minutes of 2/22.
I sent in yesterday to Brian and Roz a whole bunch of changes.
Mhm.
Brian, do you know if those were done and the new ones were posted?
Rosalind informed me that all the minutes were completed and they should be on the website. If not, no. Okay.
See if I
I'll have
can.
to follow up with her on Monday then.
Let's.
I keep losing my Zoom.
Gene, are you able to pull them up, or I can pull them up if you know there's some.
Can you pull them up? Every time I try to pull them up, I lose the Zoom meeting. I don't know what I'm doing.
I'm gonna look now too.
Okay.
They were definitely there. I just don't know if they have your.
They were
amendments to them.
there, but they were all incorrect.
Oh. Okay, so I see 125 addended, 222 BOA meeting.
Okay, the 222, do they have it as Michael Gray or Michael Bray? Number 3 on the minutes.
February 22nd, he
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be there at all.
There's no minutes there for 222?
No, there are minutes there, but Michael Bray is not on the, were you appointed by that time?
No, it was number 3, and it was Michael Bray came in
Oh, I
front of
see.
the board.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then everywhere she mentions him, she calls him Mr. Gray, not Mr. Bray.
Yeah, that has not been updated yet.
It's not, so they haven't been fixed.
Okay.
Okay.
So then,
Can we approve them with the change with the?
Well, there's a
amendment
whole
of the
bunch of
change?
changes. I don't know if you want
Okay.
to spend a half an hour fixing everything that I sent.
yeah,
Table it to next.
It's a waste of time for us.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm gonna move that we.
I'll move that we table the February 22 minutes.
March and April, correct?
March, I move that we table the March 28, and that we table the April 25th. And I'd like to have a little discussion on the April 25th. I don't know if you want me to do it offline with Brian. But
Yeah.
we need more detail.
Yeah, I think yeah, Brian, I think we need to have, I know we've talked about this, we gotta have a discussion around this, because this is obviously impeding our ability to do our work here
Yep.
at this point. So. Okay,
But Rob, now we're gonna be 5 meetings behind in minutes, and that's violating the
yeah,
bylaws, so.
Yeah.
We have to get this fixed.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. Okay,
so I made a motion to table those 3 sets of minutes until our next meeting.
I'll second that motion to table the meeting minutes.
all right, second, motion by Gene Rich, second by Dennis Hubbard. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote, so, Gene Rich,
Yes,
Dennis Hubbard,
Yes,
Michael Bray,
Yes.
Frank Sullivan,
Yes.
Eric Jakubowicz,
Yes.
and Rob Alex, yes.
okay.
Going to the next item on the agenda is for 240 South Main Street, for a special permit and for variance. And so if you give me a minute, I'll read both of the notices into the meeting minutes. First, I'll start with the, this one is for the variance. So Lancaster Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing via Zoom and in the Nashaway Meeting Room, Lancaster Town Hall, second floor, Prescott Building, 701 Main Street, Lancaster, Mass, on Thursday, June 27th, 2024 at 7 p.m. to hear and act upon the following matter. A petition by Michael and Leah Mossman, petitioners of 240 Main Street, Lancaster, Mass, 01523 for the following. A request for variance relief pursuant to the Town of Lancaster zoning bylaws 220-11 to construct a new 215 square foot garage within the allowed setbacks. The proposed site is located at 240 Main Street, Lancaster, Mass. 01523, in a zoning district identified on the Lancaster zoning map as a neighborhood business and is identified in the office of the assessors as map 37, parcel 111. A copy of the petition and accompanying documents are on file at the Prescott Building, Community Development Planning Office, 701 Main Street, Lancaster, Mass. And the office can be reached at 978-365-3326, extension 1074. Robert Alex, Chair, Lancaster Board of Appeals. And I'll read the special permit in next, so we will hear these both at the same time. The Lancaster Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing via Zoom and in the Nashaway Meeting Room, Lancaster Town Hall, second floor, Prescott Building, 701 Main Street, Lancaster, Mass, on Thursday, June 27th, 2024 at 7 p.m. to hear and act upon the following matter. A petition by Michael and Leah Mossman, petitioners 240 Main Street, Lancaster, Mass. 01523 for the following. A request for a special permit pursuant to the Town of Lancaster zoning bylaws 220-51 non-conforming buildings to extend an existing non-conforming building by adding a new 215 square foot garage to an existing 381 square foot garage that lays within the allowed side and rear setbacks for the district. The proposed site is located at 240 Main Street, Lancaster, Mass. 01523, is zoned in the district identified on the Town of Lancaster zoning bylaw as neighborhood business, is identified by the town assessor as map 37, parcel 111. Copy of the petition and accompanying documents are on file at the Prescott Building, Community Development Planning Office, 701 Main Street, Lancaster, Mass. The office can be reached at 978-365-3326, extension 1074. Robert Alex, Chair, Lancaster Board of Appeals. For both of these, the special permit and the variance, will have the voting members as Gene Rich, Frank Sullivan, Eric Jakubowicz, Dennis Hubbard, and Michael Bray. Do we have someone from the applicant to present to the board what they're looking to do? Dr. Mossman.
Good evening.
members of the board, chairman of the board. I'm Robert Cirillo. I'm actually the attorney for Michael Mossman and Leah Mossman. They are present with me tonight, off camera. As you can see by the applications, this is a request for special permit and variance to essentially take down a non-conforming building, a garage, which is 300, it's actually 430 square feet, and to construct on another non-conforming building, a smaller addition, 215 square feet. The property functions as a single family home on the, well, it's a mixed use. There's a residential unit on the second floor and the dentist's office on the first floor. It's been in business for many years in town. And this proposal was submitted in part to free up the driveway and potentially and anticipating the possibility of seeking a permit for more parking spaces if necessary, up to 16. We feel that this is a something that a special permit should be allowed, because essentially what we're doing is we're consolidating two non-conforming buildings into one non-conforming building that's smaller in square footage. Both buildings sit near the property line. The one that is being proposed taken down is approximately a foot. The one that the proposal is being added onto sits about 5 inches, and it's just a slightly angled building. And so the build out of the additional 215 square feet would result in a encroachment into, would be 3 inches from the property line, which is, we felt it was insubstantial in light of the nonconformity of the existing building and the Mossman's ability to add on to that building. And actually, when you take down the second non-conforming garage, we feel it's what they are proposing is less non-conforming than what exists now. And for those reasons, I think that this proposal, the board can grant the special permit and variance if necessary. And we did submit pictures. There are plans. The pictures were submitted late today, so I don't know if that made it to everybody, but that's their proposal, and we were hoping the board would approve our request.
Thank you.
Rob, I have a few questions.
Sure.
Attorney Cirillo, how many parking places are they proposing?
In total, they are proposing 13.
Is it necessary to have 13, or can it go down to 11? The reason I'm asking is looking at the plan number 8 and 9, which are adjacent to the driveway. That driveway is only 20 feet wide. You've got a stone wall and you've got a fence and you've got a lot of brush. And if you're going to put 2 parking places there, then you're cutting it down to like a 10-foot, very narrow driveway to make a sharp right to get into 7, 8, and 9, or 7. Well, I don't know. Maybe, whatever the other 2 next to number 7 would be. Maybe 5, 6, and 7. Like, would it make more sense to take 8 and 9 out of there and maybe add 1 next to 5 and do away with 8 and 9 on that entranceway? Just
yes, I see what you're talking about, and
I'm thinking winter snow, trying to get in and out of there. They're going to have a problem. It's tight.
yes, and I that may be a real issue. I without discussing that with the Mossmans, the idea for taking down the garage was to get more spaces, and if it was to get the 11 spaces tonight, and if they had to submit another plan or another request for additional spaces down the road, that's something they could do. I think that, I mean, if you lost two spaces because I mean, Ms. Rich makes a good point. You know?
Yeah, no, it's, and again, this was sort of what the engineer had kind of drawn
Sure.
out, but I can see the point. And it's, 11 would probably be adequate
Yes.
for what we need.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think my concern there too would be right around emergency vehicle access to the back of the house as well.
Yeah.
That we're severely cutting down on that, right? You're cutting it down, if it's 20 feet based on what I'm seeing, right? You're cutting it down to
And
16 or right? That's only if you park right up against the wall, right? You're cutting
Yeah.
it down maybe
Yeah.
16 feet, and you could be even less. Seeing how people park in general.
Gonna say if somebody has a park tight, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Gotta get the kids out of the car. That's gonna be a tough ask, you know?
because I think a parking space normally is 9 feet wide, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But that's also parking 4 is kind of wedged in there too. But I guess from a procedural question, what we're seeing permits for is the garage, right?
Yes.
Tearing one down and putting the other one in.
Yeah, that would be more of a site plan issue once this goes before the planning board for site plan.
But we could we condition the demolition and addition of the new garage so that they don't exceed 11 parking spaces?
Well, I think the question before the board is, allowing allowing the expansion of a non-conforming building, or an accessory structure, so I don't know if that really involves this parking. I think we can, condition, I think I think when it comes before the planning board for site plan review, that same question will arise. I'm just not sure,
Doesn't safety come into play with a variance or a special permit though? 220.
a special permit.
Would another permit need to be used to extend the driveway or a variance? Because we're going right up to the property line in the back and some other areas that aren't paved. So I'm just wondering if the variances they're asking for covers everything that's on the site plan. So either we need more variances or is that non-jurisdictional? I would have thought it would be if we're paving right up to yard setbacks.
Well, they're asking for a variance for the yard setbacks for the rear and the side.
I thought only for the building. Did I misread that? Because like parking space 4 is grass right now.
Parking, I don't think there's any restrictions on where you can park. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but you can park right on your property line. I don't think we have
Yes.
a bylaw that restricts
Okay.
you from where you park on your property.
So our parking spaces don't have to adhere to our yard setbacks.
No,
I was trying to read those
Yeah.
bylaws earlier today. Okay.
should be 51.
Are you looking at section 22 required off-street parking, Gene?
Which section, Brian?
22, 220 zoning bylaw, section 22. Required off-street parking.
Yeah, we're not
There's nothing
changing.
really there that applies,
No,
No, nothing applying.
23.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Rob, did you do the calculation for the medical or dental minimum number of spaces? So for the dentist office, you have 175 per one parking space per 175. You're probably exceeding that, correct?
I believe the plan has it referenced
No.
at 16, which was the reason we would have to apply for site plan. And I agree with you, Brian. I thought that tonight was we were seeking the permits and for the ability to demolish the existing building and to build a second, and build an addition onto the other existing garage. It was always my understanding that when we were talking about other parking spaces, we would have to go possibly for site plan review. I mean, I have my own thoughts on the existing parking, the nonconformity of the business, and making more spaces would again make that less nonconforming. But the purpose of tonight's hearing, I thought, was we were seeking the permits to consolidate the two garages. If
Right. So, I mean, if I could, yeah, so site plan is really concerns, the number of parking spaces being added to either a business or residential use. And it would be triggered by having more than the 10 spaces. And there's no change of use, but it would be triggered by the parking. So I think, I leave it up to the board, but
So do you think they have to go, they definitely will be going to the planning board for site plan approval?
yes, it would be
They're
triggered
creating tenable,
from going to more than 10 spaces.
okay, all right. All right,
Any other questions from the board?
Not pertaining to the addition and demolition.
All right, I'll open it up to the public for any comment. You can, if you're online and you have a comment, please raise your hand and then we'll identify you and go from there. Not seeing any comment from the public.
I'll make a motion that we close the variance public hearing. You want to do them separate?
Yeah, it probably makes the
Okay.
most sense.
I'll
right.
second the motion to close the variance.
Okay. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, call for a roll call vote. To close the hearing. So Gene Rich,
Yes,
Frank Sullivan,
Yes.
Eric Jacobowitz,
Yes.
Dennis Hubbard,
Yes.
Michael Bray.
Yes.
All right.
I'll make a motion that we approve the variance under section 220-11B to remove an existing garage and add a new 215 square foot garage onto the existing to the rear setback to be 3 inches from the property line. And, I didn't get the side setback, but I think the side setback were,
The side setback.
Setback was okay, I thought.
Yeah,
that was okay, okay.
Yes.
So, just to allow the rear setback to be within 3 inches of the property line.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Frank.
All right.
who was
Frank
that?
Sullivan. Frank Sullivan.
Frank?
So motion by Gene Rich, second by Frank Sullivan. Any discussion? Hearing none, go to a roll call vote.
Just one thought, well, should the motion include the demolition of the building, or is, because it's the rear, it's the addition that's gonna be causing the setback?
Right.
So I'm not sure, I mean, it's probably doesn't matter, but I'm not sure the necessity of
I said
including the,
to approve the variance for the demolition of the existing 430 square foot garage and the construction of a 215 square foot addition to the 381 square foot garage, which will cause the rear setback to be three inches from the property line.
okay, yeah,
Got that?
Yep.
Okay.
Gene, we do need a side, we need a side variance on this one too.
I
Remember
thought
looking
we
at the
did,
numbers?
but
Yeah, it's 30 yards, right? 30 feet, excuse me.
it's 20 feet.
20
And
feet
we're-
in neighborhood business.
Neighborhood business, I was looking at residential, sorry. We're still under that if you look at the parking space. Called
Doesn't
out
we-
as 20 feet. We'll be under that. I'm trying to scale the site plan here, but if
think
you
you're right.
draw,
Yeah.
draw
Yes.
that line up for the 20 foot, you're looking at probably somewhere around 12 I'm trying to scale it. I
I
hate
think
doing
it's
that.
that 4. That's 29. I'm thinking it's right at 20. If no, you're right. It is less than 20. Yep.
So yeah, 20 is going down about a third of the
Yeah,
way
it's
through the
about the middle
building.
of it. Yep. All right.
So- Wants to put a parking space in there, so would we want to restrict it to 12-foot setback off the
Oh,
side?
okay, so that 20-foot dimension is not to the edge of the new addition, okay.
garage.
No, the old building was compliant. The new building is not, the extension is not going to be.
So let me try this again. 215 addition
That's-
to
Gotcha.
existing.
Gotcha.
What's the measurement at the top? It says 22 feet, right above this parking spot 4.
That's 20.22, that's 0.22 of a
Two.
foot, that's 20, less than that.
0.22 inches.
Right,
Easy.
So if you look at down near where 8 and 9 are, they've got a 20-foot marker.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
And if you follow that up, you're coming right through the new
Building.
So it's probably going to be
You got a parking spot there.
15,
Yeah.
maybe 15. So demo the 430 garage, construct 215 addition to existing 381 garage with rear 3 inches to property line and side yard.
I scaled it off the park thing. It's 15 feet from the edge of the
So
building.
side yard setback, 15 feet.
15 feet.
Okay. All right. Do you want me to do another motion
I think we can accept that
as a friendly amendment?
as a friendly.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So to go to roll call vote. So Gene Rich,
Yes.
Dennis Hubbard,
Yes,
Frank Sullivan,
Yes.
Eric Jacobowitz,
Yes.
Michael Bray.
Yes.
All right, so 5-0 vote. So that's for the variance.
Yeah.
So we
Now,
will have that drawn up and filed with the town clerk within 14 days, at which point we'll go through a 20-day appeal period with the town clerk, and then you can pick it up from there. All right, and so now on to the special permit.
I'll make a motion that we close the hearing for the special permit.
I'll second that.
Frank,
Is that Frank?
Yep.
Okay. So motion by Gene Rich, second by Frank Sullivan. Any discussion? Hearing none, go to a roll call vote. So Gene Rich,
yes.
Dennis Hubbard,
Yes.
Frank Sullivan,
Yes.
Eric Jakubowicz,
Yes.
Michael Bray.
Yes.
All right. So the meeting is closed, or the public hearing is closed.
So, let's see. I'll make a motion that we approve the special permit to allow the addition of a 215 square foot garage to the existing 381 square foot garage. As the use will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
All right. Frank's, so motion by Gene Rich, second by Frank Sullivan. Hearing any discussion? Hearing none. Go to a roll call vote. So Gene Rich,
Yes.
Dennis Hubbard,
Yes.
Frank Sullivan,
Yes.
Eric Jakubowicz,
Yes.
Michael Bray.
Yes.
All right, so get 5-0. So again, same with the special permit. Within 14 days, we'll file it with the town clerk, which will then trigger the 20-day appeal period, at which point you'll be notified and then can file those with the registry of deeds.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the board. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Oh, here. Okay, so next on the agenda is the continued public hearing for the comprehensive permit to 11 building units for residential housing at 13 Neck Road.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Attorney Christopher Alfin, Blattman, Bobrowski, Haverty, and Silverstein. Thank you for giving us the continuance at the last hearing. I know I was on the hearing and I saw a lot of members of the public were also on that hearing, but we wanted to have a continuance just to have the opportunity to respond to the DPW letter and the public safety letter, which we've since then have been working on. A couple other updates. There was a request that we stake out the property so that the board could get a feel of the size of the property. We've done that. We're sorry it took a little bit longer than we expected. Our surveyor is different than our civil engineer, so it just took us time to get our surveyor out there. But our surveyors staked out the property. They've also staked out the locations of the buildings. So we'll encourage the board members. I don't think we need to have an official site visit, but board members on their own can go out and take a look at the property and get a feel for how large the parcel is. Second, I'm happy to report that the sewer credit issue has been resolved. Some sewer credits became available and they have been purchased by my client, by the applicant. So that is all set and no longer an issue. So happy to report that. Like I said, Hancock has been working on preparing materials in response to the DPW comments. They produced a response letter. Our plan was to go over that response letter tonight with the understanding that we just submitted it yesterday or the day before. So I understand if you want peer review to review that or have time for peer review to review our response letter. But tonight we'd like the opportunity for Hancock to go over that response letter, go over some of the revisions they've made in some of the supplemental documents. And after that, I think we can start having a larger conversation about where we're going from here.
I know one of the things, Attorney Alphen, that was on the list was a revised waiver list, but I didn't see that in any of the documentation that gets sent over.
Yeah, so I think what that was with the waiver list actually on the plan set. And and so that might be some updated things, but I was looking at the current waiver list that we have now and the updated waiver list on the plan, and they're pretty much similar. There aren't too many changes. I figured that we would have a comprehensive conversation about the waiver list at the July hearing once we've wrapped up everything. In case we make any changes tonight or anything like that, I will sort of, hopefully my last document that I submit to you is a final waiver list. And then in July, we can have a conversation and have a detailed conversation about the final waiver list.
Chris, did we get a copy of the letter that you're responding to the DPW or no?
Yes, you should have. It was forwarded to the chairman and to Brian. Has that been, I don't know if it was forwarded to the board members. I hope it was.
Yes, everything should be there, Gene. It says response letter or,
I got the revised plans.
It's dated June 25th. So,
yeah, it says June 25th, Chris Alpin letter or something.
well, there's a Hancock.
No, that's the Hancock, right? The Alpin is the for Brian.
Response letter from Hancock. Okay, updated site plan.
And just for the record, while we're talking about what was submitted, I did submit a legal memorandum. That doesn't need to be read into the record, but I hope the board takes the time to read my letter and sort of my standpoint about where things stand as far as density goes. And also, I know the Affordable Trust resubmitted their letter as well. That letter was dated almost a year ago, but I wanted to make sure it was part of the public record. And I would just encourage the board members to review my letter and the Affordable Trust letter as well as part of this consideration.
I just found you. We didn't get that in our package, Brian. They're all just in the email, so
Oh, okay, well,
all we got in our package was the map, the plans, the updated plans.
no, these are all. Oh,
Yeah, I'm looking at it in my phone. I can see it now, but there's no
Yeah.
way I can read it now. I'm gonna have to,
oh,
Yeah.
okay, right, but they were.
It wasn't printed out.
it wasn't printed. Yeah. My old eyes can't read.
Oh,
this.
I'm sorry. So you're saying, so when you came over to pick up the plans today?
All there was a set of plans. So
Okay, all right. I'm
plans, but
sorry,
I don't
Dean.
have any of these
I
other
thought you.
documents that he's talking about, so.
Right, but I thought you had, okay, all right, I understand. You were looking for, I should have had all the hard copies of
Yeah.
all the, okay. All right, I thought it was just the plans you guys were looking for, not like the 8x11, the documents. I thought you had access and could print those out.
Yeah, I think for every meeting, Frank, Eric, and Gene want hard copies of
Yeah,
every
yeah.
material.
The
every
whole
copy.
packets.
I think it's Dennis and I and I don't know, Mike may want hard copies too.
Okay,
Yeah, I haven't read the
I
email.
thought it was the, I just wanted to get you the copies, of the plan set.
Brian, just make the applicant do it. Then you don't have to worry about it.
There you
Put it
go.
on the applicant to get the hard copies.
Because they're not in, or are they? Oh, yeah, they are on the site, right?
Yeah, they're on the website too.
Okay, all right, so I can pull them up there and at least read them.
Yeah,
All right.
All right, well, maybe what we can do is have Russ pull up his materials, and then everybody can sort of read it at the same time, and he can sort of review the letter with the understanding that we just submitted this a couple of days ago. So I understand if the board needs time to read it to themselves in full, digest it, and maybe have peer review it. So Russ, do you want to take over?
Yeah, I'll try and share my screen here. Bring up the letter. Okay, everyone can see this, right?
Yep.
All right. So for the record, Russ Tedford from Hancock Associates, representing the applicants here. And we submitted a plan set containing both some comments received at our previous meeting, some DPW comments, and some Department of Public Safety comments. As mentioned before, revised waiver list on the title sheet. We removed the conservation portion of it after it was determined they did not have jurisdiction, just to clarify that was removed. Additionally, there was a request to cut back the fence at the southern corner for improved sight lines. I know that the abutter's driveway is right up on the property line, and we made that change to the site plan. Also brought up was EV spaces per the Mass stretch code. The site is required, I believe, 4 spaces. And what we've done is we've just called those out on a plan. I imagine there'll be a typical pendant post with, you know, the EV chargers on there is what we're looking at. So to then go into DPW comments. So comment number 1 is in relation to the sidewalk. DPW is requesting concrete sidewalks installed at the width that you know, the existing sidewalk is at. The applicant is agreeing with this, and the proposed plan that reflects a 4.5 width sidewalk along the frontage of Centerbridge Road. Comment number 2, stop signs at the exits. That is also reflected in the revised site plan at our exit on Centerbridge Road. Comment number 3 it's referring to a drainage improvement on the shorter section of Neck Road and the intersection of Main Street. So it's just west of the site. And what they're asking for is for us to basically cut into the existing 12-inch pipe, put a new drain manhole in, and tie that into the existing drain manhole located on Main Street. Previously, that pipe has a sort of weird configuration where it comes down that short portion of Neck Road and it actually bends off into a depression, a gully. And the DPW superintendent has noted that that area erodes pretty frequently. They're constantly replacing riprap in that area. And we're asking that this be made a condition of approval to perform this work. And yes, the applicant is agreeing to perform that. Comment number 4 refers to the tie-in. I know previous hearings we had.
Excuse me 1 second, Russ.
Yep.
I just got a text message. Somebody's waiting in the waiting room. I don't know who's in charge.
That's me.
Okay, sorry, Brian.
I'm intent
Sorry,
listening.
Russ.
No problem. Yeah, so comment number 4 we had discussed previously. It was about the tie-in to the municipal system. The peer reviewer peer review engineer also brought this up. And we've decided to make that connection. We had while our survey crew was out there, we had pulled inverts on the structure, and we had, confirmed that our connection is feasible, and we're proposing to connect our 12-inch pipe into that drain manhole at the intersection of Neck and Centerbridge Road. Now down to the Department of Public Safety comments. Comment number 1 is really stressing the need for a 20-foot width, 13.5 feet clearance for emergency access. And kind of it wants a definitive plan in place to maintain said access. And that's what we've kind of incorporated in our revised materials. We've submitted a draft snow management plan. It's basically a document to serve kind of as an agreement between, and almost a contract, between the contract, the owner, to kind of outline their duties in terms of what needs to be done for snow management, the type of channels of communication they were to go through to determine, what is impeding access. Additionally, it also gets into procedure for snow removal. We've discussed that, the snow storage on site, if it were to reach its capacity where we couldn't store more on site, this kind of gives the the format for the contractor to go in there, remove snow on site, haul it off site, in accordance with DEP snow removal guidelines. DPS comment number 2 states that okay, so it's the radius of the parking area. The radius of the turn in the parking area was designed for a truck smaller than Lancaster's current ladder truck. This current design will require every inch of 20 feet to successfully navigate through the R8 type parking lot. He also goes to mention that trucks larger than 18 feet you would impede on the drive aisle. And what we've done here is we've submitted a markup to our turn radius for the Lancaster fire truck. In the event of there is a vehicle larger than 18 feet, what this exhibit does is shows that even with a larger vehicle, there is no conflict between the two movements. Vehicles are allowed to park properly within the space, even with considering that a truck doesn't pull over the sidewalk. That the Lancaster ladder truck is able to maneuver in and out of the site with ease and room enough to make the movements. I feel like that it was kind of lost that this is a one-way configuration, so the conflict of having two-way traffic is eliminated in this sense. The fire truck has the full 20 feet to make the maneuvers, which is definitely a lot easier when you consider a typical 24-foot wide parking area where you only have a 12-foot lane to make such movements. Comment number 3 is kind of dovetailing off the previous comment. The DPS superintendent is stating that due to the diagonal angled parking, that trucks and vehicles won't be able to pull forward, basically over the curbing into the sidewalk area, which it's not necessarily true. We're not proposing wheel stops that would limit such movement within the space. So trucks could overhang, and then ultimately make it easier from what we were talking about with the auto turn exhibit. He also goes to mention it's difficult for snow plows to stack snow into an elevated area. We wouldn't recommend it on the sidewalk area, but we heard that comment in terms of the other curb portion, the island in between the two parking aisles, and we converted that to Cape Cod style berm, which is sort of made for plow trucks to easily push snow into elevated areas for snow storage. Comment number 5, I believe, is referring to vertical clearance, stuff like power lines, trees, lighting that would obstruct the 20-foot access via overhang. This kind of is going to be wrapped up into our snow management plan. It kind of talks about trees potentially inhibiting snow storage within this area. But that document kind of holds true to make sure that we have our 20-foot clear width to maintain proper vehicle access. Comment number 6 refers to sidewalk access being limited to 2 points of ramped access, meaning when all parking spots are full and public safety responders will have to navigate narrow passages to gain access to patients before care can begin. This will impact the ability to gain access to life-saving equipment in emergency situations. Imagine a stretcher carrying a patient from their home, trying to manipulate through limited access. In addition to, in response to this comment, we've submitted a emergency access exhibit, which kind of is, we highlight in our response, there's no determination through zoning bylaw or any other public safety code that determines what is adequate access coming from a home in terms of a emergency situation. All we really have is the Massachusetts Fire Safety Code, where quote says, where a townhouse, 3 or more attached dwelling units, as defined in the building code, is protected with an approved automatic sprinkler system, which the 7-unit building will have to have, and is installed with accordance to NFPA regulations as applicable. Distance shall be permitted to be increased to 150 feet. And what our exhibit is intending to do is show that access to all of the remote entrances are under 150 feet per the code. Additionally, the site, in terms of access in emergency situations, it's situated on a corner lot. Fire EMS is able to stage within the roadway, the driveway, and the site is completely covered by access for emergency services. And comment number 7 suggests that the curbing access on Neck Road, specifically at the eastern corner, should reflect the wider radius due to mutual aid responders from Bolton looking to enter the parking area from the opposite end of Neck Road. So what we've done in our revised plan is we've made the radius larger at that. Previously, this was a 5-foot radius. We've since extended it to 10. This section of Neck Road, it kind of begins to fork into the 2 separate lanes. So it's a rather large pavement width, travel width, and we feel as if that Town of Bolton fire apparatus vehicles will be able to enter the site with ease in regard to that. I did do a little poking around in research. Excuse me. Town of Bolton only houses their pumper trucks, typically about 40 to 35 feet in length, not as large as the Lancaster ladder truck, and they do have a bit of enhanced maneuverability around site. So we're pretty confident that a fire apparatus can make that movement. And that wraps up all of the comments from TPS and DPW. Additionally, we received a comment letter from a third-party engineer expressing concerns over groundwater offsets. So what we've done as part of our revised plan is lifted up the site about a foot to accommodate a more comfortable groundwater offset, as well as a part of that comment too is we've outlined, let me flip to the grading sheet. We've definitely gone into a more comprehensive draining plan outlining the stepped portions of the porous pavement course, and submitted a revised stormwater plan in terms of that. The numbers from that stormwater report are ultimately the same. They reflect the same result that we've conveyed in our previous submissions. And that wraps up all the changes we have here today. So Chris, I don't know if you want to touch base on anything else.
So, obviously what we're trying to do here is go through each issue and say, here's our response to that issue, and resolve each issue at each time. We're sort of at this point saying, please let us know if you think there's any outstanding issues. But I think we're getting close to the point where we've addressed all the comments. I understand that you may want peer review to look at the updated materials we just went over. But at this point, we feel comfortable that we've addressed all the issues. In addressing a butters message, which is sort of an uncommon thing, we decided to look at that and make upgrades to the stormwater and take some of their comments to heart. And we've addressed the abutters comments as well.
one thing around the snow storage, right? 'Cause that I think plays into some of the safety concerns that I think a number of board members have talked about, right? And I didn't see this in the snow removal plan, but what triggers when that snow storage area is at capacity and then triggers removal from the site? I didn't see that anywhere.
Yeah, if I could answer. So in the snow management plan, I know I had a concession where in the removal of snow, but I had a concession where the owner, or even I'm suggesting now if I can't find it, but that during a in a time where we're expecting a significant amount of snow, that the contractor and the owner or the owner's management meet on site and determine if this storm would push the site over snow capacity, and then in turn of prior to the storm or during the storm, they make the required I guess make it so that the contractor comes prepared for having to remove snow from offsite.
Yeah, I think we were talking about at the last hearing about X amount of inches. I think we said we believe if you do the formula in another town that has a condition, we said 12 inches, I think, then it has to be off-site, but we're fine with the condition that cuts that in half and says, okay, 6 inches, everything has to go off-site. And that can actually be a condition of the decision to address that.
So you're saying from a 12-inch storm or 12-inch height of this within the storage area?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about, I don't even know if it's 12 inches. I got to get the exact numbers. We had it at the last hearing. I know Russ did the formula, and we're happy to provide that formula again. But
is it? I guess just it can be X, right? So is it an X number of accumulated inches storm, or is it X number of accumulated inches within the storage area?
I think the way that the formula, Russ, corrects me if I'm wrong, it's inches on the ground.
Okay.
And you're able to calculate if it's inches on the ground, that's how much square footage of snow you need. And therefore, that's when everything has to come off site. So we took a conservative approach, and your decision can even be more conservative to say, Alpin's team says it's 12 inches. We're going to say it's 6 inches. And once it hits over 6 inches, it's got to go off site.
Yeah, I think the hard one there, Rob, is the snow storage, the little triangle, right?
Mm-hmm.
How high you build that mound, right? It could be very tall but narrow, or very wide and shallow, right? But at some point you lose visibility of the parking space around the corner, right? That's the only sort of threatening area there.
Yep.
Otherwise, the outside perimeter, the 5-foot fence area, basically going around, a 4-inch snowstorm would generate about almost 3 feet of height along the fence area for the parking space if you moved it, right? It's effectively 4,000 square feet down the right edge versus 500, right? But that little triangle is going to pick up part of that plus walkway and everything else, right? And obviously somebody figured out whatever the number is, but I guess my thing would be is somebody come up with some sort of number or clause or anything to sort of write visibility, right, in that one area. It's just that parking space behind it that's risky when it gets high enough.
Michael, to expand on there's several different factors that can go into plowing snow. You could have a guy show up there with a 7-foot plow to plow that lot. You're only going to stack the snow a foot and a half with that plow. You don't have enough runway to push anything. So you're trying to push all that into one spot. If you have a front end loader, you can stack it 10 feet high, but then you can't see. So there's a lot of factors that goes into plowing a lot that any calculation is not going to do anything for that. You can't.
Exactly. That's kind of why I mentioned how do you grab the visibility there?
Right, for sure. It would have to be a visibility and safety, which means almost any amount of snow there. You could put 2 inches of snow there, and it's going to fill that spot if you don't have a front end loader to fill that. It's just, and to go on to the next point, if somebody plows the first storm, that freezes there. Now you got a block of ice. Now you're not plowing anything there. You're pushing it to it, and that's it. Nobody is going to ram their equipment into that. So it's almost like anything that goes on there, it's such a small area, you have no extra there. Anything that goes on there is going to have to be hauled off every single time, it seems, for that little area to even begin to work. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I've plowed snow since I was able to do that. And that's a non-issue. Once it freezes, you ain't moving.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eric. I'm looking at it and trying to figure out, I do a plow with a truck, and how am I gonna get the snow up? How am I gonna get it there? Because
And the
you're
way
right, you're gonna need a
people plow
backhoe or a loader in order to get any snow anywhere to stack it, you
Right.
know?
And to plow now, people don't plow over a curb. You know,
Oh,
it doesn't work.
Nope.
People, they instruct all their people because it's somebody else's truck.
Mhm.
Not to plow, you know, they push up against the curb, you know, gingerly.
Yeah.
So then you get an ice dam, then you're not getting any snow in there at all.
You're gonna start losing parking spaces, because if you have a plow, it's not gonna be able to get up over that curb.
Absolutely. And they're not going to take a run and start from the street to get it in
Oh,
there.
no. Nope.
I mean, I think that leads to someone, you know, I don't know where I am overall with this, right? And I think the applicant has done a good job trying to address a lot of our needs.
Right.
But and I think the proposed buildings, yes, there's the density. I don't think that's the issue, right? Because I think they've done a good job trying to propose something that would blend well into the area. One of the concerns that I keep coming back to, I think we talk about the snow removal, we're talking about public safety, is how developed this lot becomes, and how we're really, everything we're talking about is a perfect scenario, right? From the parking to the access. And that at the end of the day, my concern, it's a safety concern and a health concern for the people there, right? In terms of, this has to work perfectly every time. And when I look at the real world, I can see this, it's not going to be a perfect situation every time, right? I think you guys are bringing up, like, the snow plowing piece plays into that as well, right? Like that again becomes one of those issues of, we can't get snow removed in the right way, we can't get the front end loader there in time, whatever it might be. It just plays into some of the concerns I have, right? I think that's just what I keep coming back to, right? It's not, I know Attorney Alfred, you had sent through your memorandum right around the density. And I don't think, when I think about it, you're right. Like there's a need for affordable housing in the town of Lancaster and the state of Massachusetts. My concern is not so much the density, it's how much we're changing, how much, I don't want to say it's not the density piece, it's the ability to maneuver within the space to keep the tenants and the occupants safe, right? When you go into removing all the snow and we have every parking spot filled, where are people going to go? They're going to park on the street, and then that's going to take some of our public safety officials to try and enforce that. It brings up these consistent concerns for me. When I look at
Functionality of the lot.
what's that again?
Functionality of the
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, and, Mr. Chairman, I think number one, as far as things like snow, that can be addressed with a condition. If the board feels that this property can't handle any snow, you can put a condition that all snow be off-site. But as far as there's too much going on this lot, I think that that's not true. This is a project that you see in a lot of municipalities. And you might not see it in Lancaster, but it's in other municipalities, and they work in other municipalities. This is a rental project. And this is just what rental projects look. And I know it's not what Lancaster's used to, but this type of design, this type of density exists in other places, and it works fine. And it houses children, and it houses families, and it houses families that normally wouldn't be able to live in Lancaster, never mind the center of Lancaster. And that's really what the goal is here.
if I may, Rob.
Yeah.
I went out yesterday, day before, after you staked it out, and thank you for staking it. I went out and I walked it and I did measurements, and you're 10 feet apart, your buildings, your big building on Neck Road is 10 feet from the porch of the next building. The building on Center Bridge Road is 3 inches. The porch is 3 inches from the sidewalk, 3 inches. It just, it's, to me, it's too much for too little of a piece of land. And maybe it happens in other cities and towns, and maybe it works well. To me, it doesn't work in Lancaster. 11, I think, is a little much. I think the locations of the buildings cause an extreme safety issue. I'm not an architect, but I can envision a different location of those buildings, maybe cutting it down to 9 and making it work. It's not up to me to do that, but I don't think I can vote in favor of this, knowing the safety of the children. Any children that are going to live there is going to be at risk because they have nowhere to go but in the street or in those triangles, which is nothing but a safety hazard. This is an historical district. I don't think what's being proposed fits. There are a lot of, 3-story houses. I think the design could be a little better designed to look like those 3-floor houses that exist in the neighborhood. I think the density needs to be reduced. I can't see it working. Nothing. I just can't see it working.
One thing that, we're not willing to reduce the number of units. It just doesn't make economic sense to reduce the units. So it is what it is. That's what we're proposing. Having said that, we have thought of the idea of revising the design to put, instead of having 3 buildings, have 2 buildings. So you have one building that contains 7 units and another building that contains 4 units. And that may create more yard space. I don't think it necessarily changes the footprint of the project, but it would provide, I guess, additional wider green space areas. And so if that's something that the board would seriously consider as something that would cause a no vote to a yes vote, we'd be happy to investigate that issue, but we didn't want to spend civil design fees and architectural fees if that's something that doesn't really move the board's position about the project.
Are you looking to keep the buildings in the locations where they are now, though? Or would you be willing to put a building along the Schmidt property and maybe do an L building with the L along the Center Bridge Road neighbor so that the entire front is open and you're not sitting on the sidewalk and you have green space? And yeah, your parking may be in the front, but it's a lot more open and easily accessible than going between a fence and a building and the way it's laid out now.
Well, that's a pretty dramatic design change. And, that would, if you tell me today that would change your position about the project, I'm willing to have that conversation with my client. But I think, one of the things we were considering is not necessarily changing the location of the buildings, although creating one of the smaller buildings just a little bit larger in the same position. That's more of what we were looking for.
I mean, the question here, you brought it up pretty often, was around, the economic viability, right? This, and I think that's one thing we haven't seen, that is that truly what's happening, right? That by reducing it down to 9, that it's no longer an economically viable project. And I'll defer to our attorney, right? Is that a right thing to ask at this point with that you brought it up?
So, Mr. Chairman, if you're asking me to chime in at this point, I'm happy to on that
Yeah,
last
please.
point, but I'd want to provide just a little context for that because there's a couple things going on kind of simultaneously right now. So we're talking about, some, potential project modifications that might address some of the concerns that we've heard tonight. We've also heard the applicant's counsel mention peer review of their latest response letter that you just got the other day, and I assume that would include a review by public safety. It just got staked. I don't know if all of you have been out there. So there's a couple kind of things in play, and so you may want to take the applicant up on getting that peer review. That may crystallize, your understanding of some of these, public safety issues a little bit better that you've articulated tonight. But, just getting back to your original point, when the applicant stated in their most recent letter, and I think it's maybe the second to last sentence, that making a reduction in density would render the project uneconomic under the 40B regulations, 56.5 sub 6, that allows the board to ask for a financial disclosure, a pro forma. And the applicant is then obligated to respond and show, in fact, that a project modification that would be a step down in density would be uneconomic. Now, that might inform your decision making going forward, but I also don't necessarily want to put the cart before the horse because you're still processing, some of the issues you've raised. And so you may get feedback from your peer reviewer, from public safety, from other people that are going to inform that conversation as well. So you now have the regulatory trigger to ask that question because council has put it in play. And so you've voiced it and it's on the table now. But as you go forward, I'm not sure you necessarily want to press it right now at this stage of tonight, but you're probably going to want to circle back on that depending on the direction of this conversation.
Okay.
And then the one last thing, and and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, is just in terms of process. And this is a question to you and the board. I understand we have a July meeting. I understand we're getting near the end of our clock on this.
Yep.
Just be mindful when you're having this discussion with your board members. If you're going to get the peer review, if you're going to have public safety comments, if the applicant and their design team are going to look at some of these things and provide another round of feedback, can all that happen before July? Because if we're going to try to do it within the next, say, whatever it is, 30 days till that meeting, that's going to be a big meeting in July, right? You're going to have a lot in front of you on your plate. And so just in terms of parsing out your workload, you may want to keep that in mind going forward. Is it practical to digest all of those things and have a meaningful conversation and close the public hearing and bring it to a vote all in one night? And that may be what you're facing if you're going to do it in one night. So again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but before you close tonight, or excuse me, not close, but continue tonight, you might just want to think about the schedule a little bit and how those pieces fit in.
Attorney Winter, do we have to vote at the July meeting or can't we just close the hearing and then we have until August to vote?
So you need to close the hearing within the 180 days as extended. You've got 40 days to issue your written decision. But the public hearing, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is going to need to be closed. So you're not going to be able to get any more feedback from the applicant or anybody else. You won't be able to take any more evidence. And so at that point, the record's going to be closed and you've got what you've got. So we won't be able to engage any longer. And you may not be at the end of your process considering how much has already been discussed just in the last half an hour. So I'm not giving you my recommendation or my opinion. I'm just stating it so that you can consider it as you move forward.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, just a question of procedure.
Yes. You just,
Thank you. I didn't see a raise hand function on the Zoom, so that's all I'm pointing out, because I would like to speak at the appropriate time. It doesn't have to be now, but I just wanted to ask how members of the public would so indicate.
There is somebody with a raised hand right now on the screen.
Okay,
Don't ask
maybe
me how they
it's
did it, but I see a hand raised.
right.
So not that I'm a Zoom expert, Mr. Chairman, by any means, but I believe under the reactions button,
Right.
yeah.
if you
Oh,
just tap that, it brings up
thank you.
another bar.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. They replaced the hand with a heart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every time they do a software update, it's different, right?
So if I could comment, Gene, Rob, right? The two areas that seem the most contentious, right, are snow removal, which is they pointed out, theoretically we could say take it all out of there, even at 2 inches, get rid of that safety hazard, right? If that's what we wanted, right? I mean, that can be resolved. And the other issue is really around the porch. And I understand where Gene's coming from with that. But looking at the plan, the 7-unit dwelling has got 2 porches on it. The upper 2-unit dwelling has no porches on it. At least
Oh, they have porches.
picture. They're not in the
Well, they have stakes for porches. All 3 buildings have porches.
okay. Because I was going to say there's no porches here and limited here. Is it too much to ask to just simply remove the porches off that building? It's a small concession there that makes that fit without safety issue. You can open up maybe a larger common space in front of the building to the left side. And get rid of that issue, right? Keeps the unit count up. It's just that building may not have porch.
Certainly, we would be, if that, I find the correlation between safety and porch. I don't really see the correlation there, but if the board feels that that's the concern, then certainly you could condition on a plan with the removal of the porches.
I don't think for me, I don't think the porch is the issue. It's the
No.
logistics of the site itself, right? And I'm thinking again, we're looking at the traffic studies and again, making the changes in the angle so that it's easier to get in and out. We've done that, right? But I'm trying to think of the real world scenarios, right? Which is when we have a Saturday when everybody's in there. Everyone's in their apartments. We're maxed out on spaces for the tenants, and then somebody's having a gathering. And then how does that then affect the surrounding area? My concern is from a public safety standpoint, right? We don't have the ability to have any sort of overflow parking. There's not a common area within that space, right, where you could go and park cars and say, hey, walk over, this is where you park. Like, there's not a lot of that in this area. And then that becomes a safety concern for people traveling on these roads. Again, for access from our Department of Public Safety, that's where the concerns get to me. Is again, I get the density, I get this isn't everywhere, and it is what it is. This is the world we've been given, or this is what we're having to help meet the needs for affordable housing. But I think again, the way this is laid out, there's the real world effects are going to cause safety issues and issues for public safety. For our public safety professionals in town, potentially, right? In those scenarios that are gonna arise, I think I had spoken about it once. Somebody was having a gathering in one of the other homes in the area, and people were parked all along those little islands, and we could put up the signs, and then again, that's going to put to no parking, etc., and then that's going to be a strain of our public safety officials to go and enforce it, right? So that becomes the add-on effects for me that I have the problem, right? The buildings and stuff, I don't have a problem, right? I understand the density. It's just how this site's configured and the fact that everything has to work perfectly, from parking to parking enforcement to snow removal, etc., that becomes the issue that I have, and that's a concern that I have around this.
Well,
Go ahead.
I feel that like what you're trying to say, Rob, is this whole formula takes the common sense out of everything. If you think of the common sense of this, it doesn't work. It would work in Newton. It works in anywhere where there's public transportation, because then your parking spaces per unit work. Not everybody has a car. Whereas in Lancaster, there's barely even Uber that works here. So there's no train to catch a block away. There's no bus stopping down the road to alleviate any of that. So like if you have the birthday party, there's not 15 kids coming off the subway going into this unit. So that's where it just takes the common sense away. You can't, it doesn't allow for that, which is, it's very troublesome for anybody in Lancaster because you can't fathom that. There's nothing that works about that. Every unit there, I mean, people don't carpool. It's just, there's going to be 2 cars for each. Then there's going to be parking on the street. There's just nowhere to go. There's not a Shaw's next door, overflow. There's not a sub shop. There's nothing. That's where I have a hard time with the whole thing. I understand it. I think the buildings look beautiful. I like the porches. I like the sidewalks. It meanders, the beds, the flowers. Yeah. It's all great. It just, I mean, sit yourself in that, go to that lot. I did today and look at it. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if everybody brought a lawn chair outside, I don't even know where you're going to put it.
So thinking outside the box for a moment, and I don't know if it's something you actually can do, because I guess this would fall a bit on the town at the same time. Neck Road, right down at the end, halfway down to this property, it splits off to the right and the left, right? Which I don't know if there's any need for that whole intersection at all. Is it an option to work with them and take the right-hand side of that and just turn that into, a decent little overflow parking spot that's over there? Right, and just let Neck Road be straight and take a right or a left. I mean, right now the intersection is somewhat unnecessary.
Yeah, that's not necessarily within the scope of what we're trying to figure out. Not a bad idea thinking outside the box, but I think that's not what we can't condition or control that necessarily.
I was up. This is Frank speaking. I mean, I walked the spot today. I agree with everything as far as the parking and the landscaping and everything looks good, but I'm in this with Gene. I think the 11 units that they're putting there is just too much for that spot. There's no room in between the buildings to go. And like Gene said, one of the corners of the buildings is 3 inches off the sidewalk, for crying out loud. You can't even walk around the corner and you're going to be in the middle of the road. I just think there's too many units on that lot. If you could reduce it down to 9 units, it would push that back a little bit. And I think that whole thing would circulate just fine. It would give you the extra parking spaces for extra people. And that's all it comes down to with me. There's just too many units there. And I'm not telling to reduce down to 5 units, but I think if they reduced it down to 9 units, the whole thing would work perfectly.
And I guess Attorney Winter, chime in here, but right, for us, right, in terms of how we're looking at this, again, we have to look at right from a safety perspective, from a well-being perspective, as well as the needs of the town from a housing perspective, right? And that's what I keep going back to is to Eric's comment. It's always kind of coming back to this common sense thing, right? Of by having this many units of the parking spaces, what are those kind of add-on effects that are going to happen? And that's where it comes to the safety piece for me in terms of how having this many units in that dense of area, there's no room for error
right
around it.
Yep.
And
go ahead, Dennis.
Sorry, I was going to say, and to me, it's less about, I think, like you said at the beginning, the number of unit housing density. It's the square footage of the buildings. It's where they're laid out, right? So if the idea to get to 9 was to take that 7-unit building, keep it the same size, put bigger units in at 9 and say, hey, it's lower density, that's not solving the problem that I think we're all having here. It is how packed or dense the site is, not with units, but with physical buildings. We're up against all the boundaries. We're up against all the setbacks. And it's realistic. We're going to have at a minimum 11 cars out of the 15 non-handicap or load unload space, right? I mean, we're and more than likely we're going to have more than that. So this whole site is going to be covered, and that adds those. Where do you put the snow? How close are we to the sidewalks? Is there enough setbacks to make that safe? And then what I struggle with also is just trying to figure out, and I know this isn't on us. This is actually how the applicant will rent it. Who's the target customer for these? Because like we said, there's not public transportation. These are going to be at least single, if not multi-car families or individuals that are living in these homes. And assuming it is a typical Lancaster resident, that's where I don't see practically this is going to work, because you're going to have closer to 2 cars. You're going to have no overflow parking on a Saturday or when everybody's there. And I don't, back to the snow removal. I find out up until we started doing the parking analysis, I was actually much more in favor of this. And as we started looking at the traffic flow on site, where does the snow go? The logistic of what limits are on the occupant to make it safe and effective, that's where I'm struggling.
It's almost like there'd have to be a lot attendant out there directing traffic and all the utilities going on a day-to-day basis all day.
I just want to point out, as this is a common discussion about parking and traffic, is that we did a traffic report that was peer reviewed, and the peer review and the traffic report didn't say any concerns about parking. You had Vanessa Associates, one of the best traffic engineers in the state, review this, and the traffic report was done by MDM, another well-known established traffic engineering group. So, you know, on issues like this, I leave them to the experts, and we're relying on the conclusions of the experts.
Do you have an idea, Attorney Alfred, at this point, in terms of what, if you would go to 2 buildings, what that might look like? Have you had discussions around what that might look like?
Russ, I don't know if you can chime in here at all. I think we've, you know, I think, again, the expense of redesigning the project, you know, it's expensive to do the architectural, to do the civil, it's expensive. So we haven't really dived too deep into it. But I think you can, if you want to pull up the site plan, maybe we can sort of give you an idea of what it would look like. And Russ, I don't know if you can go over that.
Yeah, so I know that we had talked with our client about exactly what the mix-up would look like if we were to reduce to 2 buildings. And it was kind of, you know, we threw out 7 units in a 4-unit building. I think in terms of site layout, the 7-unit building, it would pretty much remain as is where it is right now. In regard to it, the 4-unit building, where that would locate, you know, my best guess, and we don't have any sort of footprint to work off from the architect, but it'd probably run parallel to this building, you know, similar alignment, maybe tucked back towards the corner of the parking lot here, and situated this way, kind of as my cursor is showing. But yeah, as Attorney Alprin said, we haven't done the investigation and seen how it exactly fits, but you know, just my first thoughts, I think that's how it would be laid out.
Yeah, that's just trying to get a rough idea of what you think it could potentially be.
Rush, can you pull up some of the architectural plans?
Yes, hold on one sec. I'll have to dig those up. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's something someone wants to specifically look at here. But I can just run through the submitted plans if that would appease everyone. Elevation views. Site's right here.
Yeah, I don't know if we've actually presented these yet. So if you want to just go through slide 3 through 11 again, because this were updated architectural plans that we've submitted that just added a little bit more context of how it fits in the neighborhood. So if you just want to go through them, Russ, we don't have our architect here, but you know, this is a design. I represent a lot of 40B developers, and you know, as far as design goes, this is one of the nicest ones we've ever done. And that's not to say, you know, I don't say that lightly. I think this is sort of a really good job of fitting into the neighborhood. And when we first presented this to the town, we got a lot of positive feedback about this design.
When you go back to like slide 7, right? Is that rendering? Is that scaled to the actual buildings that are surrounding it? I'm just trying to I'm just trying to understand. What I'm looking at is are the adjacent buildings, is that to scale with the applicant's building as well?
I believe so. I'm not sure how the architect generated the rendering. I'm sure
Yeah,
he tried
yeah.
to make it as accurate as possible, but yeah, assuming that this was intended to be made to scale.
So I want to open it up to the board, right, in terms of next steps. I think to Attorney Winters, before I open up to the public, and then we'll open up to the public for comment. You know, what we need as a board to move forward to the July meeting. I think, the peer review of the comments, I think I haven't had a chance to make it down there yet to see it staked out myself, and I'd like to do that. I want to just get everyone's feedback in terms of what's the directions to go so that people can start to formulate their opinion as we go into our July meeting in terms of what are the asks of everybody to make an informed decision coming into July and August.
I think we definitely need the peer reviews. I think we need to hear from the DPW. I think we need to hear from public safety. I know it's a cost to redesign, but I believe, the attorney said that we could ask for a pro forma. If they're telling us that reducing isn't economical, then I would like to see that pro forma and see why it's not economical. I wish there was a way we could take a fire truck they've got the road staked out. I know it's rough riding, 'cause I brought my car in there. It's a little tough, but do an actual drive-through with a fire truck. We can't do a simulation for snow because it's not here, but again, I just think it's too much and too little. And I don't know how to get past that without moving the buildings, the locations of the buildings. If they're not willing to move the locations and we're stuck with where they're at, I think it's going to be a tough sell for me.
Do you think an extra 5 feet would do it? This is again going back to the idea that nobody likes the snow, piled up in that triangle and things, right? And so if we're just going to go with the approach that, like, look, when it snows, you remove it, then you don't need this 5 foot boundary around the whole thing for snow. It just becomes pavement.
I mean, for me, snow is an issue, Mike, but it's not the main issue.
Yeah.
The main issue is when you go and you walk that lot and you look at where the stakes are and where are the children going to play? Everybody in the neighborhood has ½ acre to 2 acres of land. They have good sized yards for their children to play in. This lot is all building, all parking, trash removal, snow, whatever. There's no place left for any type of play area. There's 10 feet between the buildings, and I didn't even take out what the sidewalks are. Where do the children go to play? Are they going to go in the neighbors' yards? Are they going to go out in the street? Are they going to go in the triangles? It's just a big safety concern.
Oh, thanks, Rob. Chris, just quickly, so just getting back to the question of peer review. So I have started getting those lined up. Benas has said that they may be at the end of their scope of work and that we may need to rework their contract for more payments. Would the applicant be willing to pay more, provide more for that contract with Benas? Haley Ward hasn't said the same thing, but I can't say that that's not an issue for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly happy to have those conversations. After I talk to my client, I understand these things happen, so we'll have that conversation. If peer review needs more money, peer review needs more money.
Sure.
So we'll have those conversations.
Yeah.
Rob, I guess the only other thing other than what Gene was saying is if it comes to a redesign, if that design would be aesthetically be able to look like this does to fit into the neighborhood. My only concern would be then it would just become an L-shaped square box and look like downtown. And that would be my only thing, is if it comes to a redesign that somehow we can make it look like this, which I don't know if that's possible, if it has to go to 4 floors or something like that. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, from an aesthetic standpoint, I think the applicant has been conscientious of
I think
sound and et cetera.
Yeah.
I think they have. And again, I think this gives a good perspective in terms of how that fits. Again, I always go back to my concerns. It is a safety piece, right? And how this space operates in the real world. is always my concern. So I think that's again why we have to go back to this short peer review, look at what was provided to us, have them look at it, and then go from there.
Mr. Chairman, in a complete hypothetical,
Yeah,
without the consent or the permission of my client,
yeah.
what if it was 7 units and 1 2-unit building? Would that be a yes vote from you definitively?
Say that again, Chris, 7 units and what?
And a 2-unit building, so you have 9 units. And
So if I was hypothetically, right? So if I had the building on the left-hand side of the lot as my 7-unit building, right, as it is now.
we just ixnay one of the 2-unit buildings.
Yeah. Okay.
My problem is the big building. There's too many units in the big building and it's too close to the sidewalk and it's too close to everything and it clogs up the whole site.
I think if that 7-unit building were on the back,
Correct. Yep.
with its
With
back
the-
towards
with the
Schmidt's
main-
property, then it opens up that corner and it fits better. I don't know.
I agree with you, Gene.
All right.
It's the big building that I'm having a hard time with because it's taking up too much room. It's hogging up the sidewalk. It's out near the road. Kids will be walking around the sidewalk. They'll be out in the road. They'll get pushed out in the road. If you turn that building and put the 2-unit over there, I think that would work pretty good. That'd free up some parking spaces for extra people. And I mean, that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think
minor.
I would be interested to what the neighbors say about that, because I think the reason for this design was to have a buffer area, which is the driveway. And that was the original design. And that's why we did it in consideration to our direct abutters. That's the reason it was designed that way.
You couldn't flip the 9-unit building to where the 2 other buildings are. There's not enough room there. I mean, reduce it down to a 7-unit from 7 to 5, turn it to the side where the 2 are, put the driveway still behind it as a buffer.
There's quite a bit of land between the property line and the Schmidt house
Yep.
too. So there is quite a bit of buffer because of where the location of Schmidt's is.
There's trees along the property line there.
Mhm. Yep.
I walked it really good today just to try to get a real idea of how it works. And
Yep.
like I said, I'm just stuck with the site being really, really congested. And there's no place there's going to be a family there somewhere, or some families and kids there, and there's going to be some place for them. So I don't care about the snow. The snow we can condition them to take the snow off site. That's all that stuff is minor stuff. It's just the congested site to me is my problem. There's just no open space there whatsoever. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more the opposite. I think if you could relocate the offset to neck to me doesn't bother me. I have concerns on how close the lower corner is of that 7-unit building to the sidewalk. That's really tight right there. But to me, if you can center one of those other 2 units closer into the property line, gives you more space for snow, gets the porch of the 2-unit dwelling right off of the corner that's on the other end and helps with that sight line and visibility. I think to me that handles a lot more of the congestion, not density. I'll use a better word, the congestion on the site.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dennis. Right? Like that's what my thinking is.
I can see more practically how it's going to work.
You mean having the 7-unit and a 2-unit?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I sort of
No.
do. I mean, I think you have a good idea of what the project would look like if it's 7 and 2. And, is that, are board members willing to, can we do a straw vote here? Would members of the board vote in favor of that project?
Are you saying 7 and 2 in the exact locations, just removing one of the 2s, but the 7 staying?
Yeah,
If for me, the 7 building as is, I have no problem with that. The 2 building that's on Center Bridge, right? I think to Dennis's point, move it back a little bit so now it gives us more open space, gets us off the sidewalk and the road a little bit, and it's that same configuration. That helps me with that congestion piece, and then the what I consider to be kind of some of the inherent safety issues with 11 units within that space.
I'm with Rob.
Me too.
Yeah. Anything else for the board at the moment? I think, next steps, obviously, Attorney Alphen, you obviously have to talk to your client. I think we need to get those peer reviews started and going from there.
Chair,
Yeah,
for the peer review, we're including the traffic analysis as well, the update.
Yes.
yes.
Okay, good, because I know our parking density as we went to angled, which helps with some of the flow, did cut our density down, and I think it's got us right at the kind of 1.5 they were recommending. So I'd like them to look at, now that we added the delivery spot and the handicap spot, if they're still good with that density for the 11 units. I don't know how you calculate it. I know he was saying a 1.5, and if you do, 15 non-handicapped or loading, unloading, that's actually a 1.3, which is below the 1.5. The 17, including the handicaps, are now at 1.5. So I'm not how, as a expert, they do that math. Do they consider those spots or not? So I think we're kind of right at that limit now that we went angled. I'd like to get a read on that. If he still concurs, it's adequate.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. At this point, I'll open it up to the public. Have their hands raised. I'm gonna stick with the same methodology I've had the whole time, and giving everybody 3 minutes. And then if you can state your name and address for the record. So I think Attorney Timon, you were the first one to have your hand raised.
That may be. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually would like to, if the board would allow, to just turn my time over to Dan Merricken, who is the civil engineer who my clients, the Pirozzolo Mellos, have hired at 12 Neck Road. Attorney Alphen made passing reference to his letter, which was submitted last month, and he was going to present some points from that last month. But I'd like to have him speak, if that's okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, my name is Dan Merricken. I'm a registered professional engineer, 30 years of experience. We were retained to review the application and the plans submitted, and we provided a letter to you dated May 16th with a number of, I think, pretty technical commentary. And it's our hope that you will ask your peer review consultant to weigh in on those questions that we've raised. The applicant's counsel indicated they had addressed our comments. That's not really true. They did address a couple of comments, but we would like to see them respond in writing to our commentary. So I just want to try to stick to your 3-minute rule here. So I'm going to go through some issues, and if you have any questions, feel free to stop me mid-sentence and ask me. The drainage calculations, they're complicated, they're involved, but the crux of the issue is you compare the adequacy of your proposed drainage system against a calculation of what's coming off the site in the current condition. And the applicant has used some soil classifications that are not consistent with the test pit data, and they are using some very unusual time of concentration values. And we've asked for a response to that topic, because if they're not properly calculating the runoff coming off the site in the existing condition, then there's no assurance that the proposed drainage system is large enough, essentially. And we see some issues there where we believe they're overestimating the existing runoff pattern, which means that their drainage system may not be large enough. Second topic, major topic, is that porous pavement in a site like this is not, in our view, an appropriate stormwater BMP. This is a sensitive location. There are 2 major rivers nearby. There is habitat for rare and endangered species nearby. We're in an ACEC. Problem with porous pavement is you cannot capture a contaminant once it spills. You know, if a car has an oil leak, or a gas tank ruptures, or a delivery vehicle has a problem, it goes right into the porous pavement, into the ground, and then it soaks into the groundwater table. And, you know, traditionally on a site like this, you would design a system where you could somehow isolate the drainage system in the event of some type of hazardous spill, and that's just not possible with porous pavement. So we don't think that porous pavement is an appropriate stormwater BMP for this site. The DEP Stormwater Management Handbook has a number of criteria that the applicant's obligated to meet because it's a state requirement. They're not exempt from it as a comprehensive permit. A couple of things that we have identified are they're required to have 10 feet to a lot line. As far as we could tell, based on the plans, they don't have that in a number of places. This is maybe 5 feet. They're required to have 10 feet to a building. This looks like maybe 6 feet. So you're talking about systems that potentially have adverse impacts on the buildings that they're proposing to build, and also on the neighbors, which we don't think is appropriate. One of the more really substantial issues is, and this is universal.
I'm going to have you wrap it up just so we hit that 3-minute mark. I can have you come back at the end if we have time, but.
Yep. So this is I think one of the big issues here is that all stormwater BMPs are required to be well above the high groundwater table. And if you look at the applicant's test pit data for these test pits over here, the high groundwater table in test pit number 5 is elevation 268. And the bottom of their stormwater BMP is 268.5, 6 inches above the high groundwater table. Now, the DEP Stormwater Management Handbook requires that porous pavement be at least 3 feet above high groundwater. So you have that problem with this whole portion of the site, and also this second cell down here. It's not 3 feet above high groundwater table, and that's a big no-no in stormwater management design. So I'm going to end right there. If board members have any questions about any of the things we raised in our memo or anything I just said, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you. Next, I'll go to Martha Moore. Well, Martha Moore, Sam, and then Deb be my owners, so everyone's prepared.
Hi, everyone. I'm Martha Moore, 131 Center Bridge Road. And first, I wanted to thank the DPW and Safety Department for providing additional information, and also to the ZBA for all the work that they're doing on this. I also want to just clarify some what I consider misinformation, but the original response to this development was not positive. There were 26 people at the original site visit. All 26 people were dead against this development for the same reasons that we've been citing tonight. There was only one person, other than the town manager, that was very positive about, well, I should say not very, but positive about the site. And that person didn't even attend the site visit. So I just want to correct that misinformation. There's a lot of negative feelings about the development because of its density and its size. It is, there are other developments in Lancaster that are using a more dense format. We're already doing that. There are lots of towns surrounding us that do the dense developments, but none of them put them in the center of the town, nor do they put them in a historic district, a national historic district. And I know everyone's sighs and is bored with that terminology, but it's a real thing and it needs to be respected. And this is one of Lancaster's most valuable characteristics. It's what brings people to Lancaster is the nature of the historic characteristics of the town. And we want to preserve those because once they're gone and they're not coming back. Let me see here. Yeah, and in terms of the not being able to make enough money real quickly, I don't think the town is in, I know it's a 40B, but I don't think the town has to ensure that the developer makes enough money. That's not what the ZBA or the planning board or anybody else is about. They're about protecting Lancaster and developing Lancaster in a sane way, rational way, so Lancaster has a decent future to live. And I agree with a lot of what's been said tonight. There's a lot of, can you tell the debate has started? My phone's going off the hook. But yeah, so it's yeah. And I am curious as to if they did the development as it stands today. And I do think the barn, as they call it, is one of the big factors that has a negative impact on the development. One, there's only 3 affordable apartments in the development, just 3 out of the 11. And if they built it as it stands now, what will happen? I mean, I assume the value of everyone's house who are abutters will go down. The value will go down. So will the developer somehow make that right with the abutters?
Martha, I'm going to have you wrap up.
Will the town, how long will it take for the town to decrease the taxes on those buildings, the houses for the abutters, etc.? And I'll just close with that. But thank you for everybody for doing all the work on this. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sam, you're next.
Sorry, my wife and I have our computers switched, so she's under my name on the screen. I'm under her, so I guess either one of us can go first.
I went. I saw that. I read that about Taylor. I was like, that's not Taylor, that's Sam. So that's why I agree.
All right, so I'll start off.
So, name, address, etc.
Yep, Sam Alatis, 24 Neck Road. I'm a butter to the proposed project. So obviously I've echoed the same concerns about the parking and what that does for safety and health concerns, not only for the proposed residents there, but also all the abutters and their families in the immediate area. I think 18 spaces, 15 of which aren't handicap or flex. It's clearly not enough, right? There's 12 bedrooms in this proposed development. I'm assuming, I don't know legally how many people could live there. If it could be up to 24 driving individuals, then yeah, we're far away from, having enough parking and what that does to, the immediate area and all your concerns. I think that's a big reason why I don't agree that 9 units, is an appropriate reduction. I think even at 9 units, there's still the question of how many bedrooms and how many people of driving age can live at this, this facility. Maybe a question for council, but, is there a way to deed restrict the number of living age or driving age individuals that can live at this development to be in line with the actual parking that they can come up with? I think that would be an absolutely necessary condition, should we, cross that bridge. Echo the concerns of clearly the zero open space currently. Even the reduction to, 1 or 2 buildings leaves very little open space in terms of like the safety for any children playing on the lot. It's not just that there's not much there, on the lot. It's not like this property abuts other woodland areas that they could find. This property abuts a speeding cargo train tracks down one center bridge, one house away, and 1 house or 2 houses away down Neck Road is the train track crossing again. And then the other side of property abuts some of the busiest intersections in Lancaster, right? So it's not just that there's not much space on the lot, there's not much space, and right outside the lot, they don't really have the safest place to voyage. In terms of uneconomic, I think they started out saying, completely uneconomical, it's 11 or dead. And now all of a sudden, with the slight inkling of maybe 9, there's a little bit of opening there that, maybe 9 could do it. I'd be interested to see what 4 or 5 looks like economically. At the end of the day, if you told the developer in Lancaster they could put 4 or 5 units on a half-acre lot in Lancaster, and one of them had to be an affordable housing unit, I think you'd have a line of people, ready to do something. So, that's something to consider. I think, getting the economic, blueprints and pro forma, that if that's now on the table and able to be shared as a part of, what's been done, then I would petition the town to obtain that, especially before any type of decision is made. Again, at the end of the day, I think, 9 just wouldn't work either when you terms the number of people that would live there and the lack of space. It just doesn't actually solve the congestion. I think even if they redesigned it and you saw it, you'd probably be having these same conversations all over again at 9 units. Just because, the number of bedrooms and the number of people of driving age would really factor into that. Right now, they only have 2 one-bedroom units. Most of these are 2 and 3 bedroom units. So, there's going to be more than 1 car, per unit in these houses. It's a rural area. They're not biking to work or biking to the grocery store or walking to the grocery store. And I think, it might be the first time I finished under time tonight, but I just want to end with something I've said all along, is that this is a bad blueprint for Lancaster. I think at the end of the day, something like this, or even 9 units becoming a blueprint, is very bad for the town. To start accepting that, this is only a half-acre lot. Almost every one surrounding it is an acre lot. So does that mean, of course, we're across the street at, an acre and a quarter. Does that mean we could do 30, 40 units, right here as well? And what does that look like for the town? That's not something that Lancaster, should be forced to accept. I think it's, completely unnecessary, and there might be experts weighing in on this, but there should be realists also. At the end of the day, that's, what should override is common sense. And again, as residents and taxpayers in the town, we kind of look to the board to, again, make sure this gets done at in a reasonable manner, with very little impact to the surrounding community, and considers, not only the health and safety of those that would be living there, but also the abutters in the community, the surrounding community. It has a tremendous impact. So just keep that in mind. Thank you.
You muted, Rob.
Oh, so Deb Duramo?
Thanks. Yeah, this is Deb Duramo, 127 Harvard Road. Thank you, the board, for really looking into this in great detail. Appreciate that. I've spoken before and sent letters before, and I probably just gonna repeat what I've said. Definitely peer review is necessary on this, new information. As a citizen, I haven't seen all the information the board has. I don't think everything's posted online, so it'd be good to see that posted online. One of the things I believe is that we have a new fire truck on order, and I don't know if the turn-in radius or whatever the driving model did includes this actual size of that fire truck. So I think checking with the public safety commissioner on that, Brian, is something you might want to do. My concern is, the people living there, their health and safety. And I know you talk about safety and that the place is 3 inches off the sidewalk or off the road. There's no place for the kids to play. And, it's a safety issue, but it's also a health issue. I'm a grandmother. I know what it's like to have a kid in the house and can't get outside. I think most of us know kids need to get outside. And also us adults need to get outside. There needs to be more space for people to live in this place. And Mr. Alphen, I can't believe you said it's a rental project. This is the way it's done. Well, I'm sorry, but people live in these projects and they may be renting or buying, but that is really inappropriate what you said. So I asked the board to do their best to get reviews and make sure that there's a safe and healthy environment for the people that live there and for the neighbors. Thank you.
All right, so Taylor Malatos are next.
Okay, so good evening. I just would like to respond to the chair's comments about the residual effects of this project. I'm at 24 Neck Road. Sam is my husband, and I would like to say that this will impact the quality of our life.
Can you give your name and address, please?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's Taylor Malatos, and I'm at 24 Neck Road.
Thank you.
So I was just saying that this will impact the quality of our lives here and the lives of our family. I think if this project gets approved as is, the parking impacts us alone in our ability to hold family functions for holidays. Our family and guests will have nowhere to park on Neck Road. And we're fortunate enough to be able to host our families in our home. And I feel like that opportunity will be taken away from us if this project is approved, because it's unrealistic to really think that a project that can house up to 40 people and 1.5 cars per unit is realistic. I just echo the concerns about living in a rural town, and 1.5 cars per unit does not seem realistic to me. And then the other thing that I would like to close with is I hope that the board will take some time to review the letters that the community did submit to the state about our initial concerns when this project was brought to our attention and at the site visit, because there was a community response, and that is in writing for us to revisit and to hear the community's concerns as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Kendra.
Hi, good evening. Please forgive my muffled voice. Kendra Dickinson, 402 Oatman Way, speaking as a private resident. I also echo the concerns about the traffic. Given my day job, I actually hosted an open house at the property directly across the street, and we stopped traffic. There were cars parked on both sides of Center Bridge Road, and we actually stopped traffic during a simple 2-hour event. So I completely agree there are some serious traffic concerns. If anybody within that complex were to have any type of large party, there is just simply no auxiliary parking that's safe. I also echo the concerns regarding the stormwater and the pervious surface that the engineer hired by a private resident highlighted. I agree with his statements for what it's worth. I also think that the lack of space in general for Any adolescent outside poses an additional risk because you have a very active railroad track almost directly abutting the property. That train no longer goes just 5 to 10 miles an hour. They actually have a proposed speed increase that has taken effect. And when kids can't leave the property, when kids are forced to leave the property without adult supervision to entertain themselves, unfortunately, nefarious things could happen. And I'm afraid they could find time to spend on those tracks and potentially get hurt. So, I know density concerns aren't really of interest to the state in terms of a 40B, but I think there are still some serious safety issues. I also echo the fact that I don't think the new fire truck or the ladder truck could actually make that turn in a real life scenario. I'm glad you brought that up, Rob. I like Gene's idea where you stake out the property on where everything's going to be. Park two big trucks like I drive in each of those parking spots, which very well could be the regular parkers there, and have that fire truck enter the property at an emergency type speed, even though they can't because of the terrain, but simulate it as best you can. And in a real world scenario, could they actually make the turn? So I think everybody has really good points, and I also appreciate all the work that this board has done trying to make sure that, this project is thoroughly researched, regardless of what determination comes at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Doesn't look like we have any more public comment at this point. So at this point, we need peer reviews, right, to go through the documentation that has been sent over to us. I also think, I don't believe, I haven't seen the letter of May 16th, but I'll have to go through obviously a lot of information here from Dan Merkin. We should obviously, it sounds like the applicant has looked at that, but I think we should have Haley and Ward look at that as well and get their comments on that, along with the changes that the applicant made based on that, right? See how that all fits together. I'm curious in terms of, again, the traffic study and looking at this with the new angles. So I think, Brian, we need to go through that as well and have Vanessa look at that. I had forgotten Kendra had brought up, I don't know how train traffic plays into this too, right? And they have gone from being 10 miles an hour up to, when I was going by the other day, I think they're traveling 30 to 40 in some cases, right? And how does that play into all this? And that's something that has changed recently, right? Prior to any of this starting. The new fire truck too, I think we need to get Chief Moody, our public safety commissioner, or Commissioner Moody, I'm not sure what his new title is, but I think we need to talk to Everett and then either have him attend or get his comments, in particular around the new fire truck. And again, reviewing what the applicant has provided before us now as part of this update. That's the stuff I have from my perspective in terms of what we need to get to the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, no disagreement. I'd just add that we probably object to paying peer review to review on a butters letter. I hope you can understand that.
I expected that to come up, so I think that's, Brian, we should get a quote from Haley Ward just to review that piece, and then from our budget paying for that and what that would be worth. So I think you're 100% right. I don't think that's something that has to go on the applicant, but we should look at it from our perspective. But I still think it's valuable information, and I think we should have it reviewed to understand the validity of it, right? Because I don't want to just take it on face value.
Excuse me, Rob, do you think that the abutters that hired the engineering firm, would they be willing to pay for the peer review? I'm not sure we have a budget.
Okay. It's something we have to bring up to Kate. I
Yeah.
think in the past, because we've had, again, with we as a board are paying for Adam cost this time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where that comment's coming from.
Okay,
There are funds. I think we need to understand what that's like.
Okay.
We need to understand what it would be from Haley Ward to do that review of
Yeah.
that letter.
Mr. Chairman, and I just like to conclude with, I hope the board reviews the materials and puts a lot of thought into this. Quite frankly, you know, I think that we're going to proceed with the project we have. If, you know, I just want to remind the board in a very respectful and friendly way, you know, if the denial comes and we have to appeal this to the Housing Appeals Committee, we'll be looking to have our original design be the design that gets approved by the Housing Appeals Committee without any of the revisions and the upgrades that we've made during this public hearing process. And that's just something to keep in mind.
Chris, when you say the original, are you talking the 11?
Well, yeah, we're not changing,
Okay.
not the unit count. I'm talking about all the modifications we've made since the public hearing process has opened. And I, you know, talking and texting with my clients here, I don't think that we're going to be amendable to change the unit count. So just, you know, I don't mean to put that as a threat, but I think it's something that the board needs to consider as you ponder this at the final stages, that at the end of the day, what may be approved is what we originally came in with at the Housing Appeals Committee, if it has to go to that step.
Yes, Attorney Winter.
That being the case, we should circle back on the request for the pro forma,
That's what I was just going to ask.
right? And so it seems pretty crystal clear at this point that if we're going to truly understand and appreciate the applicant's position with respect to whether or not a reduction in density is uneconomic, you're not going to be able to comprehend that adequately without this pro forma. So I would ask the board to consider formally making that request to the applicant.
So from a procedural standpoint, do we need to do that in writing, or can I just ask for it now for Attorney Alphen for the pro forma?
I would ask for it right now, and we'll follow up with a communication to confirm the board's will.
Okay. And so at what we have to decide in terms of what that density or what that unit reduction would be, correct?
Mhm.
Well, right. And so right now you've discussed a reduction of 2 units for the time being, but to understand whether or not that actually renders the project uneconomic and therefore they can't comply with such a condition, you need to know whether or not imposing that condition in fact would render it uneconomic. And so you're not going to be able to understand that decision without this pro forma. So that's the basis. And so when they give you this information, and the regulations fairly detailed about how they deliver this information, what form it needs to be in. And so they account for that when they provide it to you. So they can show you what would happen in that event. And so you'll be able to see that then. And, you know, maybe you agree with it, you know, maybe, but it gives you a chance to at least take a look at it and make your own determination.
So Rob, would you ask Attorney Alpin to please provide us with the pro forma by the July meeting?
So, so this is, I guess, it goes back to what unit count. We've had 2 different numbers that have floated around over this process, right? The 9 that we talked about tonight, as well as 8. So that's I guess my question. Is why do we have to be specific and say?
Well, Attorney Alpin just told us that his client was not willing to reduce, that they want to go forward with the 11. So if we were to vote and make a condition to reduce it to 9, I think we need to see that pro forma to know that at 9 it is still economical and they can still make money on it. So,
Like, I guess that's my question to the board, right? Where would we want to see that performance? Is it at 8? Is it 9? Right? Those are the 2 numbers that have floated around kind of at times, right? Like that's.
I guess, Attorney Winter, do we have to ask for a specific reduction, or will the pro forma show us at 4, at 5, at 6, at 7, you know, what the profit margin is?
No, so I'm sorry, am I unmuted? Okay.
Yeah.
So their burden is to show that some or all of the proposed permit conditions that are being suggested by the board would render the project uneconomic. And so I think you need to give them a target. Now, it's not worth their resources and the board's time to look at something like 3 or 4. Now, what's a reasonable condition that this board may, just may, not getting ahead of myself, consider imposing? And so let's say we get to the next hearing and the board says, I could see voting yes here if it were 8. Well, then that's a condition you might propose. If that proposal might be 9, you can shoot for that. So we're only talking about the difference of 1 unit and, the fractional interest between a market and an affordable unit. The difference between 1, I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make in terms of their pro forma, but you're going to have to give them a target.
How does the board feel about 6 or 7?
I'm more inclined to go with 9.
Yeah, I'm on the side of 8 or 9. The 7 and a 2 looks good, and if it was dual 4s or something, looks like it would probably fit good and somewhere in that window.
Eric, if you're talking, you're muted.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I guess for me, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. For the least amount of units is the best.
Mm-hmm.
But we have no idea even how that could work, or without seeing performa. I mean, I'd love to say 3.
Brian, I don't mean to interrupt the board's discussion, of course. But to council, my concern is that you're talking about units, but really what we need in order to make a accurate pro forma is a decision on units and then the conditions you're planning on proposing. We would need a complete draft decision of exactly what the project is so that we can do an accurate pro forma. And I believe that that's what the regulations require. So if you want a pro forma, we want a complete draft decision with the conditions, number of units, etc.
Mr. Chairman, on that last point, we were focused on the number of units, but it's a fair point. In order to allow them to, actually perform this task, if there are other conditions that they're going to have to comply with as well as a unit reduction, we should put those on the table.
I mean, it sounds like, I'm leaning towards, again, we're getting the hour we're getting to, et cetera, right? Do we need to have another meeting in the interim to start to put those thoughts together? I'll throw it out to the board. Do we have to have another meeting between now and July to start to put it together with what conditions, et cetera, in order to provide that performa?
I do think we have to have a discussion about that for sure, for the other conditions, because otherwise we're just throwing things at board and not thinking it through properly.
I would agree.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think it's a good
I'm
idea.
up for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, Mr. Chairman, this gets back to sort of your process. I mentioned some time ago, if you only have 1 meeting and it's your last meeting, this is a lot to accomplish. So if you can schedule an interim meeting, maybe we get the peer review comments back in time for that, and then that's going to inform what you do next. And so I think I used the phrase before, not putting the cart before the horse. I mean, some of these things are going to become a little bit more crystal when you get these comments back.
Yeah.
Rob, do you think we can get all the comments back in 2 weeks? That we meet in 2 weeks? And then at that meeting, we instruct Chris to give us a pro forma. And Chris, would you be able to give us a pro forma in 2 weeks for the July meeting? Or is that cutting it?
I don't know.
Because we've only got 4 weeks between now and our next meeting, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we gotta.
I'm pretty sure we're gonna need to extend Vanessa's contract. We're gonna need to get that agreement. And if we can get that, I can get them going, tomorrow. The same, I've already contacted, I don't know how much, Haley Ward, the civil, I think that might be not as contentious, but, they're ready to go. And Chief Moody is looking at, the responses to his comments. So we could conceivably have something back in 2 weeks.
But is that gonna give them enough time, because it's only 2 weeks from then, to get everything to Chris to do the
Right,
work?
and then they would have to respond to those, right? So,
Yeah,
I mean, it's gonna be tough, it's gonna be tight.
yeah. And I don't think we can get a peer review back in a week. I don't think we can meet next week. I don't know that.
Yeah, I could press it and see if they could get it back as quickly as possible, given the circumstances. Can't guarantee anything. We would have to get that agreement from the applicant first.
Oh, and next week is July 4th, so we can't
Okay.
even, well, it wouldn't be the Thursday night, but
I mean, could we meet early next week to just lay out what we think some of the conditions might be, just so that we can get a ballpark of what we'd be asking for, to give them time to put the financials together for us? In the meantime, we wait for the peer review.
I could, draft a set of the list of conditions based on our discussions and circulate it, one by one. Making sure we're not.
What about the open meeting law? How many days?
That's what I'm asking, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's right. Even posting something for like Tuesday or Wednesday.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm thinking if I do something and go individually, email individual members and, so we're not deliberating or having meetings, or we're not violating the open meeting law. We could, get something agreed upon fairly soon with that method.
Brian, would that be if yeah, Attorney Winter, if Brian were to give each of us the comments individually and we responded to him individually, it's gonna violate the open meeting law, because
that's a serial meeting. That's not gonna work.
It's not gonna work.
No, I can't recommend that. You're gonna
No,
have to
we
schedule another meeting, and if you want to do that, no, Brian can prepare this draft
Yeah.
and
But we
present
still
it to
have
you
to
for
do it.
discussion at a continued public hearing date. But you're not going to be able to do it offline. It's a board decision, and you need to deliberate in public.
So Brian, if you posted our meeting tomorrow for next Tuesday for the 2nd, that gives you tomorrow and Monday, so you've got the 48 hours, right? So
That's the earliest you could do it. Yeah.
Yeah, technically we could do a meeting on Tuesday, the 2nd. We wouldn't have our peer reviews, but at least you could give us a draft of conditions and things you're looking at. We could discuss those. And then even if we were to meet the following Tuesday, by then maybe we would have peer reviews back.
I will be out of town.
You'll be out of town?
I'll be out of town.
I'll be out of town also next Tuesday.
Okay.
Next Tuesday or the following Tuesday?
So Tuesday, the 8th through the 11th, I am out of town.
You're out of town, okay.
And then we could have a fun Friday night together in the summer.
Is everybody here Tuesday the 2nd, or Frank, you're gone?
I'm gone. I can do it through my telephone. If that works.
Yeah, we'd have to, because you've had,
Yeah, he
Yeah,
can't
you
miss
have to.
another, right? So if we were to meet July 2nd, and then if the peer reviews were to go back to Brian Keating, Brian Winter, then if he, as the planning director, could he forward everything to Chris so that by the 25th, Chris could provide us with a performer, or does that have to also be done in a meeting?
I'm not sure I followed you there, but if you meet on, I think the 2nd, you get the
Yep.
peer review comments. The peer review comments can be forwarded. The board doesn't need to meet to do that.
Right.
And so if you've already settled on essentially, an outline of a draft set of conditions
Mhm.
at a board meeting, then you can forward all that set to council at that point, if that's what you were suggesting.
Yeah, so if we meet on the 2nd and we come up with a list of conditions,
Yeah.
give those to Brian, the planning director. All the peer reviews come in the following week, and Brian forwards all of those to council with our conditions. Then Chris could provide to us by the 25th the performer based on those documents.
Theoretically, yes, except that you're not going to have the benefit of the peer review comments when you decide your conditions.
No,
And so, again, sequencing, could be a little bit of an issue there.
so then can we forward the comments to Chris and then we meet the week of the 15th and agree or disagree to what those are and then forward those? But at least Chris has something to start working on.
So I don't want to speak for council, of course, but I mean, he doesn't want to do it twice, I'm willing to bet.
Right.
And so I think it would be better to meet on the 15th. Hopefully you have your peer review comments by then. And you are in a position to evaluate triage, finalize your draft conditions, so that the applicant's team is working on good information that was adopted by the board. It's not fair to kind of send them on an exercise in futility. And if it's shifting sands, they're not going to want to do it. And so we really need to have the board vote to adopt, for the purposes of requesting a pro forma, what those conditions are going to be. And that's going to be informed by the peer review. So I just think doing something on the 2nd, while, I understand, the motivations and the desire to keep this moving and give the applicant, advanced opportunity to review and respond to these things. I just don't see how you put it all together that fast.
So if we don't meet until, say, the 16th of July, do everything then Chris has 8 days, 9 days to come up with a performer. Is that?
Or grants an
feasible?
extension.
Or he asks for an extension.
Oh yeah, or, there's a couple variations on the theme here, right? We don't know where we're going to be at that meeting,
Mhm.
because we haven't had that conversation yet.
Or you don't request a pro forma.
Or so
That's
I'm going.
That's an option. I mean, this is.
Yeah, no, I'm running through the options.
It is sort of an unusual move to request a pro forma. In my belief, it's either you like the project or not. And again, it's either you find a reason, a local concern, or you don't. And you don't need to request a pro forma. That's sort of an unusual move.
So the options, again, you get to that point, you consider the conditions you're looking at. This is at a continued public hearing. You're going to get an opportunity to hear from everybody again on that, and you evaluate where you are. So then you're going to have a choice to make. If you still feel that the pro forma is necessary, now you're putting the applicant kind of between a rock and a hard place, because they don't have to grant an extension. And so you don't have enough time for them to respond if they refuse to grant an extension. So you're going to have to close the public hearing based on what you got. And that would include an unresponded to request for a pro forma. If you don't feel you need the pro forma at that point, because you've reviewed all this material, the peer review comments, and you're satisfied with the record as it stands at that point, maybe it becomes moot. But you're not going to know until you get there. So at the end of the day, when you're considering your conditions, your primary mission here is to determine whether or not, there's fundamental feasibility has been demonstrated, and you've raised concerns about open space and safety. Now, a lot of that's colored by the engineering, the civil comments, and things like that you've heard, but you're going to need your peer review responses. You're going to need, public safety and DPW to respond to some of those things. And if you're satisfied, you're satisfied. If you're still not satisfied because you think that there's information that's lacking on the record that's going to inform your understanding and therefore your ability to render a decision, then you may take that next step and feel that a pro forma is necessary. And so this is why I mentioned it at the beginning of the meeting and said we'll probably circle back on this, because we don't have the peer review comments. And, you've raised a lot of issues today. You've had a lot of very robust, substantive conversation around them. And now you need to hear from your professionals what their expert opinion is on some of these things. And so I didn't know if we would reach the pro forma issue tonight. Seems we have, but we might not be in a position to move forward on it until you get those things back. And so if that's on the, what did you say, the 15th? Then we might have to.
Our next meeting's the 25th.
Well, that your final meeting, right? But you're
Yeah.
contemplating an interim meeting between
The
now
week
and
of the 15th, yeah.
right. And so if it's the week of the 15th, that might be the night where you have to fish or cut bait on this.
So what is the peer reviews going to give us that's going to change our mind from asking for a pro forma to know whether 11 units or 6 units makes or breaks the project? What are they going to give us to make us, no, we don't need it? Because to me, the only way I'm going to know whether this project is feasible at 6 units or 8 units or whatever is by seeing the pro forma to prove to me that they are going to lose money if they go with 6.
But so that's not quite the lens, right? The lens is whether or not they've met their burden to show it's fundamentally feasible from a public safety and open space standpoint as it's been modified currently. And so if your peer review, I'm just saying hypothetically, I have no idea what they're going to say, but let's say hypothetically they come back and they agree that those concerns have been addressed or could be adequately addressed through conditions. Well, then the project as proposed would satisfy those things. If they have additional concerns or feel that some of the issues raised tonight have not been adequately addressed, well, then we have the conversation about what comes next. But it's possible, and I'm the lawyer. I'm not a civil engineer, not a site design professional. So I'm going to do my best to stay out of their space and stay in my own lane. I don't know what you're going to hear on some of these technical issues and public safety issues. That's for them to inform you and advise you on. But that's the process, right? That's why you send traffic out. That's why you send stormwater out. It's to hear those professional expert opinions so that you are properly advised on whether or not these really are issues. And if those people are satisfied and they say, no, I'm good here, the modifications and amendments to the plan have addressed my concerns, well, then you have an expert third-party peer review that's been funded by the applicant giving you their opinion that this project has met whatever performance standard they reviewed it for. So that would be the conversation that we would get into at the next meeting, right? You would have those comments back and you'd look at them and see if, in fact, let's say there were 9. If all 9 read at the bottom, addressed. This may all be a moot point. But I don't know because we don't have them.
And the only way for us to go by the July 25th meeting and go longer is for the applicant to want to extend it, correct? The time period.
That's right. We don't have the ability to unilaterally go past the 180 days.
Right.
So you'd have to close the public hearing and make a decision. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but there are a number of ways to make a decision. But the bottom line is, without an extension, you'd be out of time. And so you'd have to close the public hearing and move on to the next phase, your deliberations and your decision making.
So yes, we need to do is we need to have another meeting in the interim,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like that's where we're at. We need.
So if
Yeah,
you're
I
away,
think-
Rob, the week of the 8th, then the week of July 15th would be the week before the 25th meeting.
Yeah.
I'm free on the Tuesday, the 16th.
I'm
Yeah.
actually out of town Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay. Or I'm free on the 18th too. I'm sorry.
I could do I'm back Thursday the 18th. That's the best. I could probably call in from my phone
Mhm.
on the 16th. Can't do it the 17th.
Yeah, I can't do the 17th either. I could do the 16th or the 18th or the 19th if you want to do a Friday night, but
At this point, I could do any of those 3 nights.
okay. What about you, Frank? Traveling man?
The 18th works fine for me. Is that the Thursday?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll make it work.
Okay.
So, do you want to continue, do you want me to make a motion to continue the public hearing to Thursday, July 18th?
Yeah, I don't, Sam, I know you have your hand raised.
Oh,
Are you,
Oh.
not intentional? Okay. So yeah, if you want to make a motion then.
I was gonna say not unless we can still talk. I didn't know what the.
I mean, at this point, we're gonna have another meeting we're gonna have at least 2 more before that decision, so I think we've vetted this out pretty good tonight, so if we can go the next time, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to continue the hearing for 13 Neck Road to Thursday, July 18th at 7 p.m.
I'll second that.
Rich, second by Frank Sullivan. All right, so motion by Gene Rich to continue to 7/18 at 7 p.m. Second by Frank Sullivan. Hearing any discussion? Hearing none. Go to roll call vote. So Gene Rich,
Yes.
Dennis Hubbard,
Yes.
Frank Sullivan,
Yes.
Eric Jacobowitz,
Yes.
Rob Alex, yes. Okay. So this is continued to July 18th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We have a motion to close.
We don't have anything else.
I don't. Brian, anything else?
No.
I don't have anything else on the agenda.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
All right. Frank, Dennis beat you, so motion to close to adjourn by Gene Rich, second by Dennis Hubbard. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to roll call vote. So Gene Rich,
Yes.
Dennis Hubbard,
Yes.
Frank Sullivan,
Yes.
Eric Jacobowitz,
Yep.
Michael Bray,
Yes.
Rob Alex, yes. We are adjourned at 9:45.